Let us explore weird meditation tricks for insomnia. Really, that was really pronounced. Weird meditation tricks. Sorry, I just ate my breakfast sandwich and my mouth is not quite up to speed. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. A question that begins, what meditation practice works best for you to calm your mind, but then continues, I cannot control the flow of my thoughts anymore, especially in bed. And the comedic potential of that statement is dynamic, but we'll just assume he's talking about insomnia. I need help, so I want to begin a practice of meditating twice a day. Bravo. Well done. I'm looking for advice on what specific meditation to use for best results. Fabulous. So here is my intention. I am going to teach you exactly what to do right before bed and in bed to get a good night's sleep. I'm also going to teach you how to meditate and the basic meditation instructions you can use once every 12 hours, which are fabulous. And then at the end of the lesson, we will transition to group practice. And don't worry, that's not some sort of weird thing. It's all going to be on the same live stream, so you don't have to hunt and peck for a link. They're all there, and I think that's kind of fun. So let's jump right in. But first, a bit of the old beverage. Now, I'm going to bore you with it by talking about myself. I am super duper disabled. I have both autism and ADHD, plus everything that can go wrong, all the comorbidities, beginning with fetal alcohol exposure, birth trauma brain damage, CPTSD, Ehlers-Danlos, and of course, myalgic encephalomyelitis. So yeah, I got a bunch of shit going on and a lifelong relationship with insomnia. So I'd like to share with you that which worked best for me. Now, some people are really scared. They call themselves, and they're controlling, and they call themselves I don't call themselves, but they are the self-appointed Tantra police. So everything I'm teaching you is an open teaching, described by the late former head of the Nyingma order, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. So, if you don't think these are open teachings, you can bring it up with his, tulku. Or I'm sure you can tell everyone that I'm, continue telling people that I am, of course, am the second coming of Satan, or Buddhist Satan, who is Mara. Do whatever you want. I don't care. As long as you practice and become Buddhas, everything's cool. So let's jump right in. These techniques have really worked for me. I suspect they'll work for you as well. So what I do is a threefold process. Well, I guess the first thing I should do is, start typing. So the first thing I do is actually get the bed ready. So that when I'm good to go, I can just pad the bed and lie down. That's important. And this is also known as getting your ducks in a row. And after I get the bed ready, after I do that, I get me ready. So that would be, dental hygiene, and apparel. So whatever you wear to bed, put that on. If you wear nothing, then get completely naked. Of course, I recommend closing the windows first, unless you want to charge, admission for the neighbors. Then I recommend turning off the bedroom, all the lights in all the house, whether it's an apartment or a house. turning the light off in the bedroom, turning the light off in the room, but sit on the couch in the living room and read. So read with one eye. No, that's not a that's not a euphemism for masturbation. So reading with one eye is just the way it sounds. Good old Dilgo Kensei taught that there are two channels, or two side channels in our body, and that the right channel is very stimulating and the left channel is very sedating. Therefore, when reading right before bed, you want to read only through your left eye, closing your right eye. That'll help. Now you might say, dude, how do you read in the dark? Glad you asked. I read a book off of the free Kindle app that I use on my smartphone. And I set it so that it has a black background and beige font. And really thick, like Arial or something like that. You can control that. Like I said, it's a free app. I'm not shilling for Amazon. This is a tool I enjoy using. So I read a novel, nothing that's going to upset me too much. I don't want to trigger a psychotic break before bed, because people with autism and ADHD are prone to justice sensitivity, and we will lose our shit and start screaming at fictional characters in a novel if we don't watch ourselves. So right now, for instance, I just started a Kurt Vonnegut novel, which is very clever and it's very fun, and so I'm just enjoying that. So I'm reading it with my right eye closed, my left eye open, and when I start slowly blinking with my left eye, that's my body's signal that it's time to pad to the bedroom. When I'm in the bedroom, I lay in bed on my right side. This will compress the right side channel and make slumber more attainable. Not only did I read that, but after experimenting it for numerous decades, I can say it seems pretty true, or at least true for me. And then it's time to circulate between three practices. The first tool for the circuit is abridged crease counting. How does that work? Glad you asked. So I'm going to teach full crease counting during the group practice. Right now I'm going to teach the abridged crease counting that is most relevant to falling asleep and returning to sleep, because when we got to pee, we'll wake up. We got to wake up to roll over. We're supposed to sleep intermittently through the night. That's what we are wired to do. So sometimes the question is not getting to sleep, but returning to sleep. So this will help with that as well. So here is the basic thing. On the right hand, the ring finger, I was taught and experimented. I was taught that the right finger is, I was taught that the ring finger is correlated to the earth element on both hands. And through the enhanced sensory acuity, which is a gift of autism, that seems to be the case in my own life. So what I do is on my right hand, I count repetitions, and I advance the tip of my right thumb during each inhalation. So it would be first repetition, second repetition, third repetition, fourth repetition. On the left hand, on the left ring finger, I count sets. First set of 4, second set of 4, third set of 4, fourth set of 4. And of course, in second grade, we learned that 4 times 4 is what class? 16. So this is fabulous. Number one, being able to count 4 sets of 4 really supports this circuit of exercises. Number 2, counting this 4 sets of 4 on our ring fingers helps to ground our body and mind for sleep. Excellent. Number 3, and this is kind of a backhanded advantage, it's a bit taxing, which is what you want. Those of us who are prone to insomnia sometimes experience a surplus of mental energy. And so by doing something that is somewhat mentally taxing, we make it easier to exhaust our brain or fatigue our brain sufficiently to fall asleep. Bravo. Now it's time for the 3 T's of Tibetan Tantra. The first T is Trekcho, and although it translates as slice through, you can think of it just as mindfulness and meditation. So the lion's share, I'm not going to explain that right now. Well, I guess I might as well. Okay, I'm going to explain Trekcho right now. Then I'm going to explain, and oh yeah, by the way, abridged crease counting really is Jigme. And although Jigme literally translates as drop or syllable, functionally it's a reference to channels, winds, and drops. And in my book, after exploring every sect and subsect of Tibetan Buddhism, I found that Bengali crease counting is the easiest and most efficient form of energy work. I think it was Leonardo da Vinci who said that simplicity was the zenith of elegance. So, to me, the most elegant solution to channels, winds, and drops is simply playing with my fingers. Now you know how to use the exact method, Jigme method, to help with sleep. So I guess that what's remaining is the other 2, which is Trekcho and then Tokal. So we're going to start with Trekcho. Trekcho's mindfulness and meditation. Now, there's a shit ton of confusion on this subject. And so what I found to be most beneficial is to view mindfulness and meditation through the lens, this is my lens, through the lens of neuroscience. And once again, there's so much misinformation and a little bit of disinformation, so I find it useful to start with what not to do. Common mistakes, as most people have made the common mistakes, they can relate to the common mistakes, and they don't have to step on that landmine again. So right? So right. So let's go back over here. And let's start with good old Sturgeon's Law, which I learned because of good old Neil Gaiman. And you might say Neil Gaiman had some inappropriate sexual behavior, and I say I'd like to learn from his mistakes. I too am autistic. I too miss social cues, and I would rather learn from his mistakes, his blunders, his misdeeds, than commit them myself. For I am flawed, and I don't want to hurt anybody accidentally. So as much as his missteps break my heart, as a boy with autism, it's a really important lesson for me. And on that subject of sexual missteps amongst the autistic, I'm really grateful that I think it was last year. There's an Australian, I think she's Australian, I'm not sure. There's I think, I'm not sure who it was. Maybe it was Cate Blanchett. Maybe it was Tilda Swinton. I'm sorry. Tall white woman with angular cheekbones. I have trouble telling them apart. I hope that doesn't make me sexist or racist. Because I have difficulty with face recognition because of the autism and ADHD. So they're like the same person to me. That's not fair to them, and I apologize. But one of those two amazing actors did a movie recently, a made-for cable movie. I think it was maybe Netflix, maybe Apple. I'm not sure. Maybe Max. But she played I think it's based on a true story, a conductor, a brilliant conductor who was so horribly insensitive and traumatizing that she drove a former lover to suicide after methodically destroying her career, all the while without any sense that she'd done anything wrong. And they do a wonderful job in that movie of showing that someone can behave as a sexual predator without knowing they're doing it. Someone can behave in a cruel way that destroys people's lives non-maliciously. And so as someone who is neurodivergent, I found that so helpful to be reminded that you can be destructive without being malicious. You can be accidentally destructive. You can accidentally harm people. And accident isn't a get out of jail free card. Being neurodivergent is not a get out of jail free card. And watching the trajectory of that character as the roosters come home, as the chickens come home to roost, and the consequences of her actions destroy her life. It's just a really, really poignant cautionary tale. And as a man whose gender has been misbehaving for double-digit millennia, and as a member of the autistic community for whom social cues can be a mystery, I deeply, deeply appreciate that that movie. Once again, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the movie. It's named after the protagonist's name. That's all I've got. But anywho, Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. So, because 90% of everything sucks, 90% of humans suck, and because 90% of humans suck, you guessed it, 90% of meditation teachers suck. How bad do they suck? They suck so bad they practice pseudo-spiritual patriarchy. What's that like? It's like thinking being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel is amazing, and everyone should do it. So these people who are rigid and are controlling practice faulty meditation and teach faulty meditation. But what could I mean by that? Simply this. They implore their students to actively concentrate and actively analyze. Of course, they might use different words. They might use words like samatha, vipassana, but it's still active concentration and active analysis. What's wrong with that? Well, the only way to perform active concentration or active analysis is to use very discrete mechanisms such as those found in both our medial prefrontal cortex as well as our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And of course, I apologize for the simplicity of this illustration. But you see, our prefrontal cortex is amazing. It's kind of like a Stradivarius violin. It can do amazing things. If you want to compare, contrast, sort, calculate, reason, edit, then this is your tool. But it can be overused, and when it is overused, our amygdala gets triggered. Our amygdala is this lumpy thing, perhaps the size of an almond or a rather large pea, or a pachinko ball, a small pachinko ball. Anyway, this pea-sized structure is the seat of aggression and anxiety. And so how darkly ironic it is that we use methods in the name of peace that undermine peace, eh? And now it's time for some good news. Yes, although prefrontal cortex is not optimized for either mindfulness or meditation, there are organelles within our central nervous system that are. So let us begin with the seventh fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, mindfulness. Because every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are wired to automatically access our sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us perceive in a very special way, to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. And if you're super perceptive, if you've eaten your Wheaties this morning, you might recognize that as the opposite of being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. In fact, you might recognize it as some of the attributes of matriarchy spirituality, such as being flexible, such as being laid back. So, during our inhalation, our sympathetic nervous system is wired to perceive, but you might ask, perceive what? Glad you asked. It is wired to perceive, of course, sight, sound, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. It is wired to perceive entire spectrum of phenomena, from the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the painful to the pleasurable, from the boring to the interesting, from the glorious to the grotesque. And so, yes, we can feel a bit of a sensory overload. Fortunately, evolution's got our back. And this brings us to the eighth fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path meditation, because every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we are already wired to automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system. Where is that? Well, it's located in both the lower third as well as the upper third of that same spinal cord. Pretty cool. Talk about your one-stop shopping. So this parasympathetic nervous system is wired to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. Now, if you're half as smart as I hope you are, you might say, if this is the case, why aren't I already the Sultan of Mellow? Why aren't I the Mayor of Mellow? Why aren't I the Prince of Peace? In a word, Urkel, our cerebral cortex, due to a quirk of evolution, is so jam-packed with organelles. It's just Spazzy von Spaz. Remember how Urkel, despite his smart brain and his good heart, was always knocking into shit and creating chaos and then asking, "Did I do that?" Well, that's exactly the way our brain is. It's kind of a big dumb oaf. Or to use the phrase from Tommy Boy, he's a big dumb animal, isn't he, folks? So, I'm glad I enjoyed that joke. So here's the really, really, really cool thing. When we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, it acts like a line of programming, inviting and empowering our brain to automatically cooperate with our sympathetic nervous system. Similarly, when we silently, mentally, and passively Recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation. It acts like an additional line of programming, enabling or empowering our brain to all of a sudden spontaneously cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system. So how wild is this? Through the cunning use of two monosyllabic words, we can, in cooperation with various cycles of respiration, we can access the perception and release that is tantamount to mindfulness and meditation. Pretty cool, huh? So, this is exactly what you can do while you're lying on in the bed on your right side, counting on your right ring finger and your left ring finger. This is. And our job is not to indulge our controlling tendencies. Our job is to practice the heroic courage to be vulnerable to whatever comes up, whether it's external, internal, physical, mental, pleasurable, painful, interesting, boring, glorious, or penned by Stephen King himself. Yes, this nightmare brought to you by Stephen King. But I once had that happen. I once was in high school. I was reading, what's it called? Cujo. And for some reason, I was sleeping in a sleeping bag, and I woke up, and under my desk, I saw a little boy transform into Cujo, and I was deeply disturbed. So, what's the first T in the 3 T's? Trek show. And this is it, right there. There it is. This is also presented not as an open teaching by the late Bokar Rinpoche. So once again, this is no one's going to go to real or imagined hell for practicing these techniques. Despite what the minions of patriarchy screech. Now let's go back to the opening bit, shall we? So, we've talked about the 3 T's. The first T was tikle, or crease counting. Tikle is typically just energy work, but personally I find it's most elegantly practiced through crease counting. And if I have a choice between squandering 20 years of my life doing what's done traditionally, or doing something that works 3 times as efficiently in a fraction of the time, I'm going to choose the second. Although I did squander multiple decades learning every form of energy work, this is the easiest. We learned the second T, which is Trek Cho, or mindfulness and meditation. The third T is Tokal, and it has 2 categories. In my book, there's the gentle love contemplations and the gentle wisdom contemplations. So we're going to start with the gentle love contemplations. Oh, what do you know? Look at that. So let's go over here. Come on, coordination, don't fail me now. Fabulous. Okay. So, all complex animals on this planet have evolved to think symbolically. And in every culture, you can find figures of speech. Therefore, it should come as a little surprise that there are figures of speech in Buddhist Tantra. So here's one right now. We can lovingly wish that each mind of each being was as peaceful as the mind of a real or imagined Buddha, symbolized by a syllable comprised only of light. And we can take all those words and shrink them down to 6 syllables that we can divide during our inhalation and our exhalation. And let's do that right now. Now, there are some very superstitious people who say you can't make a wish unless you have enough energy, otherwise you will drain your own energy and die a horrible death. Said the Buddha never. But to this people, I would say, there's no more efficient way of generating good karma than loving intention. So loving intention generates the good karma that it draws off of. Therefore, calm your titties. I got that from the Scottish. The Scottish taught me that phrase. I think it's wonderful. So, the Buddha taught 4 bases of mindfulness: the mental, the interpersonal, the physical, and the circumstantial. So let's do likewise. Let's adapt this to the interpersonal, shall we? So leaping over interpersonal competitiveness. So quick like a bunny. Insert. Let's see here. Let's find pictures. Let's go to mantras. And let's scroll down. Here we go. All right, so how's about a bit of the old explanation, eh, Scarecrow? Let us lovingly wish that each being's experience of the interpersonal, which is communication, both nonverbal and verbal communication, be joyfully loving. As joyfully loving as a Buddha's speech, as a speech of a real or imagined Buddha, symbolized by a mantra. So, contrary to the ravings of the rigid and literal-minded, our job is not to visualize everybody's brain as being a whom, or everybody's speech as being a mantra, but to wish that everybody's mind be as peaceful as a Buddha's mind, symbolized by whom, or that everybody's speech be as joyfully loving as a Buddha's speech, symbolized by a mantra. And once again, it does seem ungainly, but our brains are optimized to work with figurative language, and this mental gymnastics is ideal for knocking your punk ass out, which is a line I stole from Will Smith. So, let us play with this for the next 4 breaths. Counting. Let's rehearse by counting upon our right ring finger. And so this is our second set, so we're up here on our left ring finger. Cowabunga. And we're off to the races yet again. We come to the third base of mindfulness. Let's see, let's hit Dorje Samba. Let's hit Solitary. Let's hit this bad. Let's hit this one here, see if that works okay. Okay, And now we let us lovingly wish, and love is not an emotion, because emotions come and go. It's an intention, and we guide our intentions with our words. So we're using the word form, which is a monosyllabic synonym for body. And so we can lovingly wish that all bodies of all beings now enjoy the health depicted in Buddhist statuary. Do I have a good statue to use? Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Let's do that real quick. Let's go to Dorje Sampa. Let's go to Rupa. Let's hit all files. Let's hit favorite. And let's put this bad boy right here. Back, my friends, back to the spiel. So we can lovingly wish that all bodies of all beings now enjoy the health we see depicted in Buddhist statuary depicting an archetype of enlightenment. One moment. Excuse me. Woof. Okay. So let's play with this for 4 rounds. Fabulous. Now we come to the 4th base of mindfulness. Fabulous. Okay, here we go. So now let us wish that all circumstances or lots of all beings everywhere, real or imagined, now enjoy the fabulous good fortune or boon. We see we enjoy the good fortune or boon as the Buddha's real or imagined paradise or pure land or vati, if you prefer Sanskrit, depicted in Buddhist paintings. That's it, because such imagery we have a deeply visceral response to certain imagery. Let's play with this now for the next 4 rounds. And so at this point, you're lying on your side, and your brain's you might have already fallen asleep, but that's great. But if you haven't, whoopsie, that's weird. You can just go back to the Trekcho practice of this ease, which is already over here. So now let's explore the second half of Tokal, which is gentle wisdom contemplation. So gentle, it'll blow your brain, blow your mind. It blew my mind the first time I was exposed to it. Maybe you'll enjoy it as well. Okay, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess 3 was the magic number. I'm going to hit cut. 1, 2, 3, and paste. So we're going to leap over circumstantial clinging. We're going to do that by playing with a rhetorical question. So this is a rhetorical question, which means we don't have to answer it. So what could it be like if all circumstances of all beings, real or imagined, let's rephrase this. What if all circumstances of all beings, real or imagined, were so impermanent and so interdependent that they could blissfully melt into rainbow light? That would be an illustration of impermanence. That blissfully absorbed, that would be interdependence, into our body. That would do two things. Number one, that would do three things. Number one, it would help us to viscerally experience change. Two, it would help us viscerally experience interdependence. And three, it could set in motion the idea of letting go of our sense of self. Pretty tall order. Let's see how this plays out. Now remember, it's not our job to actively visualize. It's our job to simply play with these words in harmony with our breathing. And now we're going to perform the next version. 1, 2, 3. We're going to copy. And we're going to cut. 1, 2, and paste. Leaping over physical clinging. So here we go. Oh, excuse me. Okay, here we go. Oh, that was a twitch. So, what could it be like? What if all bodies of all beings, real or imagined, were so impermanent and so interdependent that they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into our sense of the interpersonal, into our sense of communication? What if all beings' experience of the interpersonal, was so impermanent and so interdependent that it could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into our sense of awareness, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination that we call mind. And then we come to the mental. There is an idea in Buddhism called emptiness, and those who are literal minded get very, very confused about it. Speaking about it in terms of superstition or in pseudo intellectual complications. But emptiness or voidness was always ever meant to be a figure of speech. Allow me to illustrate. As we relax into our we'll start with the literal. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during the previous inhalation could feel less solid, less permanent, less defining. Very well. Now let us express this figuratively. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, any good English teacher will remind us that a simile is only as useful as it is relatable. So what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, is most certainly non-graspable to the hand. And now you understand that emptiness or voidness was simply a metaphor of the temporary experience of non-graspability available for us during each exhalation. Armed with that, now, we can wonder what it could be like if all minds of all beings were as impermanent and were so impermanent and so interdependent that they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into the vast empty void, which is a metaphor for that which is available to all beings everywhere during each exhalation. So what do we do after the rainbow yoga? You get one guess. We go back to Trekcho's slice through the duality of dread and desire by simply practicing this ease for another 16 rounds. And so that's it. We're lying on our side. We're doing 16 rounds of this ease. Then we're playing with 4 iterations of loving contemplation. Then we're continuing with this ease. And then another 4 rounds of wisdom contemplation. That's it. complete a cycle of that, as many as you can, and you will fall asleep. And when you do wake up, perhaps to roll over or perhaps to get up and go pee and come back to bed, you can return to this. And if this is overwhelming at first, you can put it on a notepad on your phone and have it there for you when you're ready in bed. And it might be ungainly the first week. Play with it every night, and you'll be surprised how quickly you master these easy techniques that have been that the elites have told us were mysterious and arcane, but really aren't. Practice all the advice I've given you, and you will see that you get you've been able to negotiate with the causes of your insomnia. Now I'm going to check the time. I've been prattling on for about the better part of an hour. So this morning's practice is going to be really truncated. But I think this was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Okay. So, as I've just mentioned, I think it could be great fun for us to meditate together, even briefly, after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. I think it could be great fun if together as a team we played with the latest iteration of the vast expanse of Diamond Mind, composed in about the 6th century by Prahe Vajra, translated into English recently by Yeshe Donden, adapted and amplified by this MOOC who sits before you right now. Excuse me. Let us recite 3 repetitions of the first verse. Listen, O virtuous one, I will show you the truth of your being. You are and always have been like Vajrasattva, the infinite consciousness, living presence, and creative power of the divine. The vast spaciousness of being always good, the way of liberation for all beings, beyond appearance and disappearance, and beyond the grasp of the intellect. One moment, if you please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Copy. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to hit delete. And paste. And adjust. Whee! Okay. So I'm going to make sure that everything's fitting okay. Excellent. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, so now, during the second repetition, I'm going to intersperse some commentary so this makes sense. Together. Listen, O virtuous one, I will show you the truth of your being. So, the person who wrote this text was not yang but yin. He was not into patriarchy but matriarchy. He was not trying to exercise elitism and petty one-upsmanship on us by saying, hey, you guys were born steeped in sin. No, he's saying the opposite. You guys are already well, metaphorically, you guys are already Buddhas. Literally, you guys already have all the tools you need to become a Buddha ridiculously quickly. Pretty cool. Let's continue. You already always have been like Vajrasattva, the infinite consciousness, living presence, and creative power of the divine. How are we like this archetype of enlightenment? Simple. Each of us has a sympathetic nervous system, the basis of mindfulness. Each of us has a parasympathetic nervous system, the basis of meditation. Each of us has an anterior cingulate gyrus, the basis of empathy. That is how we are like Vajrasattva. Let's continue. The infinite consciousness, living presence, and creative power of the divine. This is a mouthful. That's what she said. Or he said. That's fun too. What do we mean by infinite consciousness? Glad you asked. As I mentioned during the ridiculously lengthy opening lesson, there are some who are rigid and controlling, whereas there is a minority that is flexible and laid back. Think of it like the Big Lebowski and the Dude. So the Big Lebowskis of the world are about concentration. I must control what I perceive, and I will focus on it like it's a teeny tiny little dot, and everything else can just fuck off. So that's concentration. Everything else can fuck off. Mindfulness is the opposite. Everything else can fuck in. Yes, welcome aboard. There's plenty of, come on inside. There's plenty of room. And so we are open. We choose to notice. How do we notice? We choose to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. We choose to be aware of all mind's antics of perceiving, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining, whether or not they are external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. Hence, it is the opposite of single-pointedness. It is infinite. And since we are not repressing anything but completely vulnerable to whatever comes up, regardless of how subtle or dynamic it is, that is what we mean by creative power. But what do we mean by divine? In Buddhist Tantra, divine has a very precise meaning, and it is exactly what we explored during the opening lesson, but I'll give you a concise version right now. I'll give you the ultimate concise version right now as opposed to the conventional one that's coming in a few minutes. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever circumstance we might have experienced during our previous inhalation could seem appearing yet void. How void? As non-graspable as the real or imagined paradise or Pure Land or Vati depicted in Buddhist painting. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever body we might have felt during our previous inhalation could feel as if it was felt or sensual yet void. How void? As non-graspable as an archetype or Devi or Yadam of enlightenment comprised only of light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever communication we have experienced during our inhalation could feel as if it was resounding yet void. How void? As non-graspable as a real or imagined mantra comprised only of light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever perception, emotion, intention, thought, memory, or imagining we might have sampled during our previous inhalation could feel as if it was as lucid yet non-graspable as a Buddha's mind symbolized by a teeny tiny syllable whom comprised only of light. Let's continue. The vast spaciousness of being always good, the way of liberation for all beings. So this Ati Yoga, this Trek show, this Mahasandhi, this Dzogchen is the Buddha's easy path, described in Pali as Sati Pasadi, outlined by the 7 enlightenment factors, inferred or mentioned in the Eightfold Path. This is the quick path to full enlightenment. Beyond appearance and disappearance, beyond the grasp of the intellect. So this is a fun duality, appearance and disappearance. As we breathe in, they seem like two very separate things. But as we relax into our exhalation, they have so much in common. They are both less graspable. They are both less permanent. They are both less defining. And so, beyond the grasp of the intellect reminds us that we cannot faith our way or think our way to nirvana, but we can feel our way there by simply noticing and releasing. So having completed our second repetition with commentary, now let's together perform our third repetition just to kind of seal this in a bow. Listen, O virtuous one, I will show you the truth of your being. You are and always have been like Vajrasattva, the infinite consciousness, living presence, and creative power of the divine. The vast spaciousness of being always good, the way of liberation for all beings, beyond appearance and disappearance, beyond the grasp of the intellect. And now let us practice 16 recitations or repetitions of this ease. Good morning, Jared. Let's see. Do you think meditation techniques used by the Buddha himself are the best ones to use? You know, I really do. But here's the funny thing. If the Buddha existed, the Buddha may just be an archetype, a very popular one, but an archetype nonetheless. And anybody who's ever spent some time with translators know that it's more of an art than a science. And so when push comes to shove, tradition won't tell us what the Buddha taught. Texts can at best only infer what the Buddha taught. The only way to really test which teachings are real or not real, which are effective or non-effective, is to test them in the laboratory of our own body and mind. Practice these teachings, follow the instructions, notice your results. If you follow my instructions faithfully, twice a day, every day, for 14 consecutive days, perhaps for 4 consecutive months, and you get crap results, then go find a better teacher. Bless your heart. But, if you hang out with me twice a day, every day, for 14 consecutive days to 4 months, and you get great results, this might be your one-stop shopping. You'll never know until you put it to the test. Love being our essence, attainment is already complete, and there is no need to strive at practicing great compassion. Love being the supreme good, there is no need either to extol the many splendid qualities of compassion. Ooh, I just had a brainstorm. Okay, one moment. Let's go back and hit copy and go back again and hit paste. And let's, there we go. Let's go over here. Oof. And hit this. Excellent. Okay, let's go back. Love being our essence, attainment is already complete, and there is no need to strive at practicing great compassion. Loving the supreme good, there is no need either to extol the many splendid qualities of compassion. One moment, please bear with me. All right. So let's explain this. There are so many people. There are so many people who insist that we have to contrive empathy. We have to concentrate upon it. We have to think about it. And then maybe we'll have a glimpse of it. That those people only speak that way because they concentrate and contemplate so much that it's overactivating their amygdala, the seat of aggression and anxiety. But here's the irony. If they just practice the ease of noticing, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, and relaxing physically as well as mentally releasing, then not only would that calm their amygdala, but it would spontaneously activate their anterior cingulate gyrus, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. That is why Tukul Thondup insisted that the highest love was spontaneous and uncontrived. So, what kind of love are we talking about? We cannot help but wish that other beings' circumstances are as fortunate as the Pure Land of a real or imagined Buddha. We cannot help but wish that all beings' bodies be as healthy as the health depicted in an archetype of enlightenment. We can not help but wish that all beings' relationships be as joyful as joyfully loving as a Buddhist speech symbolized by mantra, we cannot help but wish that all beings' minds be as peacefully enlightened as a Buddha's mind is symbolized by a suitable home. We cannot help but wish these viscerally, subconsciously. Let's meditate. One, two, three, and copy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and paste. 1, 2, 3, 4, and paste. Let's chant. Phenomena not other than the true condition, without input on or part they appear and disappear. Naturally arising wisdom need not be actively sought. Self-liberating by nature, it reveals the way. Okay, now with a bit of the old commentary. Phenomena not other than the true condition. Many centuries ago, the South Indian Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna taught us of the two truths, the conventional and the ultimate. That was nothing new. What was new is this: they are both important. Just as a bird cannot take to the sky with only one wing, but is in need of both, we need both the conventional and the ultimate. We need to notice as we breathe in, as well as release as we breathe out. If we're not noticing as we breathe in, then there's nothing to let go of as we breathe out. So whatever we notice, though it be beautiful or ugly, harmonious or discordant, pleasurable or painful, delicious or disgusting, fragrant or foul, is useful. We don't have to generate virtuous phenomena. We don't have to pacify unvirtuous phenomena. They both come, they both go. Our job is simple: notice and release. That is what is meant by the equanimity of the seventh enlightenment factor. The balance of applying the same antidote to every situation. What is the same antidote? Noticing and releasing. Noticing and releasing. That's it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Naturally arising wisdom not be actively sought. So if we seek wisdom actively, it's not naturally arising, it's contrived. Fun with words. Self-liberating by nature, it reveals the way. What does that mean? Simply this: I'm forever grateful to the late Chagdud Tulku, for he explained that the 5 wisdoms are not the antidote to the 5 poisons. There's only one antidote: awareness and emptiness. And when that is applied to the 5 poisons, they spontaneously become the 5 wisdoms. That blew my mind. And now for our third and final recitation of this verse. Phenomena not other than the true condition, without input on or upon they appear and disappear. Naturally arising wisdom need not be actively sought. Self-liberating by nature, it reveals the way. Let's meditate. In notion, liberation draws from within our own being and is not dependent on others. So, during the second repetition of this recitation, I'll offer a commentary. Earth, air, fire, and water, all the indwelling divine. So, what do we mean by this? Well, we have the conventional and the ultimate. Conventionally, in the Iron Age, we thought of things in terms of 4 or 5 elements. That's not important. This is never meant to be a metaphysical treatise so that you could conjure magic. Au contraire. It's meant to use the common day, workaday experience and bring it into the path of the spiritual. So, as we relax into our exhalation, whatever solidity we might have experienced during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as less graspable, less permanent, less defining. It could feel as if it was as non-graspable as real or imagined Ratnasambhava Buddha comprised only of light. In fact, you know what could be fun right now? Here, let me add something real quick. Insert pictures. Let's go to F for 5 Dhyana Buddha. And let's see, which do I want to look at right now? This is probably the simplest. This is 4.5, and this is... Ooh, this is much better. Okay, let's put this one here, see what happens. Okay, and I'm going to hit wrap behind text. I'm going to scroll up. Wrong way. Okay, so here we go. All right, let's try this again. So as we relax into our exhalation, whatever solidity we might have noticed during a previous inhalation could feel as if it was as non-graspable as real or imagined Ratnasambhava Buddha comprised only of light. But wait, there's more. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever spaciousness we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as real or imagined Vairochana comprised only of light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever warmth we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable or as real or imagined Amitabha comprised only of light. As we relax into our exhalation, Whatever moisture we might have noticed during our inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as real or imagined Akshobhya Buddha, comprised only of light. Let's continue. Despite domestic conditions. Okay. So what follows next is deliciously subversive. And so let's go back over here to, I'm going to tap button 5 and take you back, if I can, if I may. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to Sturgeon's Law that reminds us that 90% of the people out there are involved in yang, that they're involved in pseudo-spiritual patriarchy, a patriarchy that is rigid, fearful, suspicious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. The toxic elitism of patriarchy tells us we must have a teacher and we must have the teacher's blessings, and that we aren't enlightened until our teacher tells us we're enlightened. Even though the Buddha was not about elitism, he was about egalitarianism. Despite that, the author of this text insists that no, we don't need a teacher. All we need to do is cooperate with the ultimate teacher, which is our own sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems that drive our experience of perception and release in harmony with our inhalation and exhalation that together are known as mindfulness and meditation. That is all the teacher we need. Subversive, is it not? And now let's tie this up in a big red bow. Earth, air, fire, and water, all the indwelling divine. Despite our mistaken notions, liberation dawns from within our own being and is not dependent on others. And so now let us practice this early morning's final meditation, shall we? Fabulous. Well, my friends, this has been an extraordinarily action-packed live stream. Let's see here. I want to hit this button and tap 6. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 or so hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.